Hi, neighbors. Brandy here with There's No Place Like Orange. And I know a lot of you are probably watching the Dodgers game right now. It's very exciting. Go, Freddie, go. But I'm sure some of you will be tuning in here. And if not, you'll be able to watch it later. I want to introduce an incredible guest. I'm so honored that she's here. We have our former mayor, Honorable Mayor Carolyn Cavecche here in the garage with me.
It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. And so we have a ton of the same questions that we hear over and over again. And the person I've spent a lot of time with her and talking about all this stuff and Measure Z, and she's the person that can answer all of these questions for you, like, how did we get here? So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background with the city?
Well, my husband and I have been in the city for quite a while. We had all of our children here; they're all adults now. We've been homeowners here for many years. I served on the city council from 2001 to 2007, six as a councilwoman and mayor pro tem, and then was elected mayor in 2006 and served my 3 terms that I'm allowed, and left office in 2012.
In 2012 as mayor, and she has a reputation in this town. Let me tell you, she's notorious for being an incredible mayor. Oh, you love the shirt. Thank you so much. Anyway, I want to get into right away, right off the bat. How did we get here?
Well, I actually just did an opinion piece in the Foothill Century, and I did it because I was stopped everywhere, Target, Home Depot, even at my church, and people don't understand why the city is in a fiscal crisis now, and why people didn't do something about it sooner. And so I took some time. I did a deep dive into about 15 years worth of budgets. I met with city staff, and it became really obvious to me. And the answer is really simple. I get frustrated sometimes that the city isn't broadcasting this as much as they should. But I think they're just trying to be respectful of past administrations and past city managers. But the city never recovered from the Great Recession that happened in 2007 when I was mayor. They never recovered. They have not had any economic development, little to none economic development activities since redevelopment ended in 2012, which is how the city was actually funding economic development. When that went away in 2012, most cities actually tried to fund economic development in another way because it's important to try to actually keep revenues coming into the city. We want businesses here. We want people that can go to places to pay sales tax. We want property taxes to go up. And the city did little to no activities since 2012 in any economic development. So our revenue stream became very stagnant and kind of ebbed and flowed with how the economy was going. And so there was never any big push. And the city councils kept balancing budgets, but they kept balancing budgets by not hiring people. And you can do that for a little while, but I think most of us who have been in Orange for a while started to notice kind of in the pre 2000 teens, all of a sudden graffiti was staying up a little bit longer. There was no code enforcement. We had a lot of problems with the homeless popping up. And what happens is that if the city doesn't have enough employees actually servicing, and that's what a city does, they're a service organization, then things start slipping through the cracks. And we started to notice that happening. They also stopped funding the internal reserve funds, which are really important for cities to have as expenses come up and for fiscal emergencies. So it wasn't until the pandemic and all these federal dollars started flowing into the city coffers that they were actually able to fill temporarily internal service funds and kind of get their feet underneath them. But the pandemic, it's kind of weird to say, but that flux of federal dollars actually put off this crisis for a couple years because money was coming in. And then the council decided they wanted to hire cops. We were very low on police officers. There's a kind of a federal standard on where we should be per 1,000 residents, and we were dropping below that. And the council wanted to hire, and they hired 11 cops, and there was no revenues coming in to cover that. And it all kind of hit the fan. After Dan Slater and John Gillenhammer were elected that next year, those police officers hit the budget, and there we were. And we have a new city manager who's been there for a few years. We have a new finance director now, and they started to actually look to see what kind of revenues do we actually need in Orange to really provide competent levels of service. And that's when everybody finally saw the numbers. And that's where we're at right now, is at a point where we don't have enough employees to provide the services that we need.
So we got a question on here actually just now that I want
Okay.
to clear up. And this person asked, was a little bit higher. He said, while we know how we got here, why didn't the new mayor and city council call this out 3 years ago? And the fact is that our mayor hasn't even been on 2 years yet. So they weren't there. And also, who was on the council at the time that added the 11 officers?
I believe it was, and someone will probably log on and tell me if I'm wrong. I'm picturing that council meeting because I actually just rewatched those meetings to kind of prep for writing that opinion piece. Mayor Mark Murphy was in office. I believe it was council members John Demetru, Chip Monaco, Dennis Bilodeau, Ana Gutierrez, Ariana Barrios, and Kathy Tavaleras. Did that add up to seven? I think that added up
Yeah,
to
that's
seven.
7.
Yeah. And I want to state the officers were needed. We were dangerously understaffed at PD. And if you look, you have a finance director who's no longer with the city, who my understanding is was telling the council that the revenues were there, it wasn't going to be a problem, and the revenues weren't there.
Oh, wow. Oh,
Yeah.
see, that's new information I
Yeah.
didn't know. And yes, we have a person on here saying transparency is very important, which is
Yeah.
why we have her here because she will break everything down for us. So, you were mayor during the recession in 2008, and I
Yes.
know you had to make a lot of crazy cuts. So, what were some of the things that you cut back then?
Well, the Great Recession hit in December of 2007. I was elected mayor 2006, and I not laughingly, but I look back and say I had 1 year of being able to be a normal mayor and 5 years of just trying to keep fire stations open and cops on the street and library doors open. It was like having a chair knocked out from underneath you or falling off something and getting the wind knocked out of you. It was a sudden drop. Within about a year and a half, we lost about excuse me, about $12 million in revenues in about a year and a half. The city, it just plummeted. So we had to go back to all of our employees, open up every contract. We did a cut across the board in salaries. We did a furlough where we started to close the cities an extra day. People went from 40 hours to 30 odd hours. And we really just rolled up our shirt sleeves. And the goal was to try not to let anybody go, to try to keep the service levels up as much as we could. And the employees were willing to take cuts in pay and renegotiate salaries for a time being to be able to do that. And then at that point, we had a full time economic development director. She's now the city manager at Garden Grove, an amazingly smart woman. And she and I hit the streets and pushed as much economic development as we could. We went out and gave presentations to brokerage firms and businesses. We worked really hard to try to help businesses get through our community development department to keep businesses open. And we pushed as hard as we could for my last 5 years as mayor to try to open up economic development and bring as many businesses in. It was not a pleasant time to be in local government during those years. It was tough all around.
Oh my gosh, I can imagine.
Yeah.
And is that something so after doing that about so you're saying after that the city really never recovered. It wasn't until we got the COVID money.
Yeah, no, and when you look at the budget numbers and you look at when I in the 2007 2008 budget, which was half of it was Great Recession, half wasn't. We had just a little bit less than 800 employees in the city of Orange. By the time I left the office, we were down quite a bit, and within the last few years, we were at the low 700. So you're talking about maybe 80 90 less employees in a city that is continuing to grow. And that's what they ran out for all of these years. They just kept these positions frozen. They didn't hire people, and they didn't do any type of revenue activities to try to bring more revenues in. So they were balancing budgets every year, but it was by not providing services.
Wow, and why do you think why did nobody ever say anything?
I don't know. I wasn't in office at the time. I don't know what was being said. I think sometimes council members can look and say, "Oh, look, we balanced the budget. Isn't this good?" Um And it takes a while. Sometimes employees, can do things, more than you think they possibly can do. And it maybe is going to take a couple of years before all of a sudden the impacts start to happen. And I think one of my biggest examples, besides losing police officers, were below levels for firefighters. One of my biggest is a community development department here in the city of Orange. That's planning, that's building. That's where, if you're a new business in town and you need to get the building you want to rent remodeled and fixed up and do the tenant improvements, that's the department that you go through. And that department has been desecrated over the last 10 years, to the point where it's taking years and years and years for businesses to be able to open here in the city of Orange. I have an acquaintance who works for a medical professional, and she interviewed multiple contractors who actually wouldn't come into the city of Orange to do the job,
Whoa.
because they said, "You're going to hate me by the time I finish the job. We're going to be not doing good business because I can't get through the planning department." And that's just them literally working as hard as they can. It just takes that amount of time.
Well, that's depressing. And you
Yes.
think that's because, we just don't have planners
We
and
don't
people to
have the
do it?
employees. We don't have the employees staffing, and
Oh,
that's
yeah,
because they
yeah.
haven't been hired.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh, um, and you know what? I hear that all the time too, even with the new pizzeria Irene that just opened, they said it just took them 2 years
yeah,
to get opened. Same thing with the Lost Bean. They said it was actually the health department that caused such a delay, but that's pretty scary at a time when we
yeah.
desperately need economic
Yes,
development.
we need new businesses.
How do you feel like we are doing on economic development now? I know we have a new economic development person.
Well, Aaron's been with the city since I was there, so he's not new, but and he worked for the economic development department back in the day. But when redevelopment was taken away from the city in 2012, he took on other work, so he wasn't doing economic development full time anymore. And this council seems to be very focused on bringing in new revenue, and they've put Aaron full time on this. He's put together an economic development. We had a group that met last year. A lot of businesses. We did a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, and he went back and put together a plan for economic development. And there's a roundtable that meets quarterly with him, which I'm on it, as well as multiple other business owners in the town, and they're giving him some good pushes, and this council seems to be very supportive.
Okay, awesome. And then let's see, we got a question on here from Patty. What measures of oversight will be in place to assure the tax will be responsibly allocated? What measures are in place to bring economic development and revenue? So you just answered
Yeah.
that, but so what about this oversight committee?
There is a taxpayer oversight committee that's written into the resolution the city passed, and I'm not sure how that's going to be. If every council member gets someone, or I'm not sure how that appointment, that will be up to the mayor and the city council. But there will be a taxpayer oversight committee that will be monitoring it, and will be, I'm assuming, making yearly reports publicly back to the council, and more important, to the taxpayers. I sat on numerous school bond oversight committees when I was the CEO of the Orange County Taxpayers Association, and I used to go and make yearly reports, and I used to tell the board, "I'm here in front of you making it, but I'm really making it to the taxpayers of your district." And my assumption will be that that's what this group will do as well.
I think I actually just randomly stumbled upon a committee listing for the
Hmm.
audit committee, and it says there's 7 positions
Okay.
open. And I thought the same thing. I'm like, is this what this is? I randomly, anyway, I sent it to the smartest people I know in the city instantly, like,
Good.
please apply for
Yeah.
this. I did not apply.
Yeah.
We don't want me on there. Um, let's see. Okay, we've also lost a lot of tax revenue due to businesses like with the Orange Mall, for
Yes,
example.
yes. The Orange Mall used to be, per square foot, one of the highest tax producing sites in the city of Orange back in the day. I was always surprised. It will always be the Mall of Orange to me, by the way. I know it's the Village now, but it will always be the Mall of Orange. And that is very sad. I will say that people's purchasing habits have changed quite a bit over the years, especially since the pandemic. I think a lot of people purchase things online, and that formula for tax revenue being returned to cities for online purchases is kind of convoluted and hard, and it's based on a formula. And my understanding from the city is that we're actually winners in that. But things have changed in how people purchase items. And so this council really needs to figure out what is going to be a good, stable source of revenue for the city. When I was on the council, sales tax was the highest, property taxes was next. Now it's switched. Property taxes now the highest revenue generating source for the city.
Oh, wow. I guess it makes sense. Our
It is
properties
sad
are
to
so
see the
high.
Mall of Orange gone, though. I was a Broadway shopper for years. If anyone
Oh.
out there remembers the Broadway, it's where I got all my baby clothes, so
And
yeah.
Kathy, you said, made an announcement at the last city council meeting and said, "Please, everyone, stop filming the mall. It is a construction zone.
Yeah,
They've asked you not to go sneak in there and film." I thought,
yeah,
"Oh, is she talking to me? I'll use the drone."
yeah.
Um, somebody else on here wants to know. So, during your time on council, were you trying to work on getting a Costco here?
Yes, and mayors way before me and mayors after me have all tried very hard to get a Costco here. We negotiated. Mayors have been negotiating with Costco for decades now, and
Wow.
they're very specific about where they want it. During my original tenure, it was east of the 55. They were actually looking at the Yorba Park site, even though yes, I know it's a dump, and that would be very difficult. And that intersection is probably one of the busiest intersections in town, at least it used to be. And then somewhere in the middle of my term, they jumped to east of the 55. And we've looked at several sites for them. I was this close to getting them on Catella across from Home Depot. I was this close to
Wow.
getting them. And unfortunately, the land that they were going to purchase just across the street, the price was raised and they backed out. And I know they've been focused on the Mall of Orange site for quite a while now. And unfortunately, we all know the story that this year's lease goes for quite a while. Quite a few more decades before that goes up. But yes, we have all tried to get Costco's. Many mayors have.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's depressing to think about.
Yeah.
Um, okay, I want to ask also, we've had a lot of people say that we need an audit. How do you feel about us doing an audit?
Well, I'm always pro audit. I think if people start to argue against audits, it makes me want to audit people more. Um, it has to be cost effective, though. There has to be a specific reason you're auditing, and it needs to be worth the money. And this Mayor Slater and this council, I know some want an audit, some don't. I've been through the books. I've looked at budgets and I think to me it's pretty clear. I think the accounting, the way things have been booked and the way the accounting has been going has changed a little bit for finance directors. And I know our new finance director, is titling things differently and labeling things differently. And that can be kind of confusing, but she's trying to get everything set in the right way versus what has been done in the past. And so sometimes it's hard to trace the money. But I'm always positive for an audit, unless it's astronomically expensive. And this city has to be very careful on what it focuses its dollars on right now.
And I want to emphasize on everything that you went through. Do you think that there was any foul play going on?
No, I don't. I actually don't. I worked the city manager who was there after me, the mayors who came in after me, all love the city of Orange. And I honestly, I would be shocked if there was anything hinky going on with any elected official or any manager. I would be absolutely shocked because I know these people. I just think there was inaction and nobody was literally trying to look at why is our revenue staying stagnant, why are we only having employees at this level. They just didn't do anything and I don't understand that. I truly don't. But it was just a lot of inaction and it angers me actually that for so many years, things just were not done. And we were just status quo to the point where finally service levels dropped. They finally dropped to a point that people started to look around and go, what the heck is going on to our Orange? And that's when the numbers were looked at and they realized that we just aren't bringing in the money to pay for staff that we actually need. And more importantly, too, on top of that, even is internal service funds. There's a lot of projects out there. People look and say, oh, we have this many $1 million in the internal service funds. How much more do you need? A lot of that money is already booked towards projects in the future. And there has been no maintenance done on a lot of facilities for cities over these years because there just was no revenue to do that. And buildings can only last so long. Parks can only last so long if you don't have maintenance. Roads only last so long before the potholes get so bad. Street lights will only last so long. Traffic signals will only last so long. All of those have to be replaced if you want to have a safe community.
Oh my gosh, there's so much that goes into it that you
Yeah.
don't even think about. What other things in terms of maintenance have we put off besides, streetlights, potholes? I mean, what is there? I
You
know
know,
that fire
the
stations.
fire stations are probably gonna have to be replaced, vehicles, I mean, those are things that constantly has to happen. You know, it really there are so many moving parts to running a city, and again, it's a service organization. The employees at City Hall don't make widgets. They're only there to serve the taxpayers. That is their only duty, is to serve the taxpayers. And, it's very easy to say, "Well, you have all these employees at City Hall." Well, number one, they don't have that many cities, but I don't know what department you're going to close, because you have to have a finance department. You have to have an HR department. You have to have a public works department. Yes, I guess you could decide that libraries and parks are not as important as public safety. I would not want to have to make that decision. I was put in a position where I thought I was going to have to, and we were able to get through it. But that's going to be a tough decision. And even if this council decides we're closing the libraries, we're going to shutter the parks, it still isn't enough money because they're such a small part of the budget overall. It won't make up the deficit needed to get all the service funds filled back up and to actually hire enough cops on the street.
So, what does it look like from your perspective? What do you think the council will have to cut? Or what things have you heard? I know I saw the proposal that Tom Casella had
Yeah.
put out originally asking each department to cut 13%.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't want to speak for the city council. I'll only speak for myself. Public safety is going to always be the number one. It's always going to be number one. And I include public works and public safety because they keep our roads. To me, there's three public safety agencies. There's the police, there's the fire, and there's public works. Those are the three that have to be, kept as strong as you can. Going back to community development, if you want to bring in more revenue, you have to have a strong community development department, because you're not going to get a business to come in and open up if there is nobody to do plan checks and do building inspections. That's not going to happen. And so that leaves you parks and libraries. And I think we've all seen it already where they've cut programs and things like that. So and the city was gracious and stepped up, but I don't wanna live in a community that doesn't have good parks, that doesn't have safe parks to go to, and I don't use the libraries very much, but when my kids were little, I was there multiple times, a week. So what kind of city do we want to have is really what's on the ballot on Tuesday. What do we want Orange to look like?
It's so true. And we
Yeah.
have comments coming in. Boo, libraries in the senior center are very
Yeah.
important. When you close libraries and parks, who then takes care of those? Is it the county or they just close them?
Well, the council will decide, do they wanna sell to the county? Do they want the county to come in? I don't think the city should be selling, infrastructure, that they own, to the county. I don't think this community is gonna put up with that. And it's interesting, we can talk about going to the sheriff's and Orange County Fire Authority if you want as well too, so,
Um, Also, I know, talk about that. Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Another question. Oh, scroll up a little bit because this is an important one. It says, why has Mayor Slater been so quiet in regards to the tax? Well, the city, just so that you guys know, city council cannot take a stance on a ballot measure. They cannot show bias. But I will tell you that every single city council member up there voted, except for Gillenhammer, every single one of them voted to put the measure on the ballot because they see the writing on the wall and they know it's important. And I can tell you that when Mayor Slater was trying so hard to pass a motion to get it onto the ballot, and each one was not passing. And the last time he did it, he said, "Come on, you guys, this is for Orange. Come on, like let's just give the residents the opportunity to make that decision because it wasn't even going to get onto the ballot for a while. It took months for them to get it on there. Anyway, so 6 out of the 7 city council members are for the tax, including Mayor Slater. And yeah, I know they're all very passionate about it. Okay, let's see. Yesterday was madness with the Eugene guy. Yes, I know. um, how is funding for our pension liability going? Can you speak to that at all?
Um, I I can't speak specifics. There've been multiple negotiations since I've left office. I know this, the former council did put up floated a pension bond at although I'm not a big fan of pension bonds. They did get an incredibly low rate, so I'm going to give them that. So they were able to pay off some of their obligation at a much lower rate than they would have to be paying off CalPERS. That's part of those internal service funds. You know, what councils have done in the past is they keep putting money away to cover lots of different things, including employee obligations going forward.
Yeah, that one's whopper. Also, so someone on here is saying that library is only 4% of the budget. But maybe you can speak on that a little bit too, despite it being
4.5.
4.5% of the
It is
budget.
4.5% of the budget. Yeah. I can actually say I have it down here. Libraries are 4.5 and parks are a little bit more than that, 8%, and that's it. So a very small amount of the budget.
But so if we aren't cutting from those items, then we're going back to cutting police and
You
fire.
will, and my understanding is and again, I'm not going to speak for this council, but it looks like that the approach that they've talked about is doing across the board cuts to all of the departments. You know, public safety, police and fire, not even public works, because I know I'm one of the few people who do consider public works part of the public safety stool. But police and fire are 70% of the budget, almost 70%. And there's no way you can't cut them and meet a deficit and fill your internal service funds. You have to cut them. There isn't it isn't possible without cutting them. So people who say, oh, they're just using public safety as a scare tool, it's almost 70% of the budget goes to police and fire. They will be cut.
They will be cut. It's inevitable. And we have a few questions actually coming in on Facebook. Hi, Facebook. How can city council have their staff investigate doing rebates and incentive programs to residents that buy a car from Orange dealers at a cost of up to 7.5 million over the next 5 years? So maybe you want to talk a little
I'm
bit about
more
this.
than happy to talk about that. So a lot of people don't understand, and it's funny because I'm going to assume, Brady, that most of the people who watch your Instagram live are knowledgeable people about how things happen in the city. I'm going to assume that.
Mhm.
But most people, I think polling has showed close to 70% when polled don't know that your sales tax rate for this where your vehicle is registered follows you wherever you buy the car. So it's one of the only sale items that you purchase where you might say, oh, I'm going to go to Irvine to buy my car or Santa Ana to buy my car. You will still pay the city of Orange sales tax rate. You can't go to another jurisdiction. So when a large sales tax measure comes in, or any sales tax measure comes into a city, even the 0.5%, which is one of the smallest I've ever seen any city do, auto dealers get very, very nervous because when somebody in Orange, if this passes and somebody in Orange decides to buy a car within a few months, they're going to say, well, let's go to Irvine to buy the car because the sales tax rate is less there. It doesn't matter. You will still pay the Orange sales tax rate. The problem is that the 1% that the city usually gets will stay in Irvine. Orange will only get what's considered the special tax, the 0.5 cent that was just added. So it usually what happens is auto dealers and cities will come together and say the goal is to keep those car sales in the city of Orange because it helps the taxpayers, it helps the city because all of that tax revenue stays in Orange, the whole 1.5, the whole 1 cent and a 0.5 cent, not just the 0.5%. And so usually a deal is made in a lot of these cities where that 0.5 cent will get rebated to the taxpayer. This isn't a rebate that goes to the auto dealer. It goes back to the taxpayer. They're the ones that get the positiveness. And then the city gets the tax that they normally would have gotten. But that's not happening in the city of Orange. I don't think the council is going to make a decision on this. I think it's been presented to them a couple times, and I don't think they're going to do it. A lot of people look at this as a win-win because it keeps sales tax revenue in the city. Sales tax revenue comes to the city to provide services, and the city will still, I believe, is still going to have to do a very robust education to make sure people know you need to buy your vehicles in Orange if you can. You need to buy your vehicles in Orange. Don't go run into Irvine thinking you're going to get a lower tax rate because you're not. And then Irvine wins and Orange loses out. So that's why cities look at this, because they think it will actually help the taxpayer, because the taxpayer gets that increase back to their pockets and the city gets the base sales tax to stay, to be able to provide services. I don't know. I hope I explained that well enough.
Yes, and,
Okay.
um
But I don't believe that's happening in Orange. I don't think the city council is doing that. The last I saw,
yeah, I don't
I
think.
don't think they are, yeah.
No, and I think, it's because of all the, no on Measure Z.
Well, and that's people ask why the auto dealers are so engaged in that, and this is a business. These are auto dealers. You can talk about that they're community partners, and our auto dealers are wonderful in the city of Orange, just coming forward and partnering with this, but they feel they're going to lose revenue if this passes because, again, most people will try to go to another jurisdiction where they think it's a less sales tax. I mean, when you think about it, next to your home, cars are like the biggest purchase a lot of people make. You pay it off over a period of time, and auto dealers think that their sales are going to go down, and they think they're going to flee. Although I will say that Orange Auto Dealers probably got a lot of people from Santa Ana coming in to buy cars here when they raised their sales tax because they thought they were fleeing Santa Ana. So you wonder how much they're losing, but they do if they own dealerships in multiple cities. But it's a business decision from them. They think their business is going to go down, and statistically it will go down for them unless the city does a really good job of educating taxpayers to say stay in Orange, buy your cars.
Buy your cars. And so the no on Measure Z folks have now, they funded $900,000.
It's when I left the city, I went to work for the Orange County Taxpayers Association. I ran that organization for 10 years. Part of my job was doing political campaign work, and I have to say, this is an extraordinary large amount of money to be funded on a half-cent sales tax when in cities like Buena Park, they're not doing anything. And I've heard rumors that a deal was made in Buena Park with the council and the auto dealers,
I've heard that same rumor.
about a billboard being moved that they didn't like. So it's going to be interesting to kind of keep an eye on that. But this is obviously the auto dealers are really determined, to try to kill this, and it's a business for them, and it is business. They think they feel they're going to lose business, and it has happened in other cities. This council and this city manager has tried to let them know that they're going to be work very hard because they want to keep sales tax in the city as well too. So
As well, and so
yeah.
with the 900,000, I was told roughly $250,000 of that has been spent on social media ads.
Yeah.
Um, we got a lady on here. Hi, Carolyn. I taught your son Willie music back
Oh,
in the 90s, at Junior Music
Junior Music
Academy.
Academy,
Oh,
yes,
I
on
hope you're
Catella,
well.
Tuscatella Center,
Miss
yes, love
Adrian.
them. Yeah.
Okay, we're getting a lot of questions in here, so we're gonna scroll down and just try to get to. Okay, has anyone ever considered turning the abandoned mall into something like an Amazon distribution center to bring in money? Companies like Amazon offer lots of incentives and generate jobs.
Yeah. Well, one of our council members works for Amazon, Council Member Gillenhammer, so he would be the person. I think the one thing that sometimes some people don't understand is that the city really has no say or oversight over what goes into a piece of private land, except for zoning and general plan designation. Other than that, once it's zoned properly and there's a general plan designation for it, the city can't pick and choose which businesses come in to those properties. And so the Mall of Orange is one of those things where, it's unfortunately there are multiple owners of that piece of land, and it's kind of a mishmash on how to do things. I hear a lot about it in Old Town too,
Yeah.
where people get upset about restaurants leaving and it's so the city's fault. Well, the city doesn't own those buildings, and you're kind of at the whim of the landowner, who they lease to.
Which is another reason, City of Orange, we don't own a lot of our own property
We
like Irvine does.
well,
Um,
the city of Irvine doesn't own a lot of their properties. The Irvine company owns
yeah.
everything, and so they can be very particular about who rents their stuff. So yeah,
And we definitely don't want to be giving up our
yeah.
libraries to the county. Okay, here's Ryan on here. He said the incentive not being spread around to the non-franchise dealers won't make the impact that is intended to make. dealers will discount the few $100s to offset, which is true.
Yeah.
You could bid dealerships against each other, no problem, for
Yeah,
that
and I will just
$300.
say, in my opinion, it should be every auto dealer. It should be every auto dealer, if I were to do it, it would be every auto dealer, and it would only be for the 0.5%.
Yeah.
What the auto dealers were asking for was way over the 0.5%. So the city would actually be rebating back to the taxpayer more than that 0.5%. So it would be a lose for service provision for the city.
Yeah, it would be a lose. Like,
Yeah.
they are really asking a
And
lot.
I haven't been following it too much recently. I kind of saw it blow up and thought, well, okay, it's not going to go. And yeah, so
Okay, someone said even at the 8.25%, Orange would still be one of the lower tax rate cities locally, which is true. I mean, unless you look at, like Tustin, Irvine, Anaheim that have a lot of money.
yeah, well, and the difference is there are multiple kinds of city in Orange County. So it's 34 cities. In It's comparing apples and oranges to say, well, Aliso Viejo doesn't have a sales tax, so why should Orange? You really have to start breaking it down to full service cities, contract cities, and then I even break it down further. We're a central Orange County city, and I know people love, we love our community here, but Orange is a central Orange County city. I think it's top 7 in the county. When I was on the council, we were, I think, in the top 220, 250 cities population in the country. So we're not this little city. We're a larger city in Orange County, and we have city problems that need to be addressed that way. Tustin, bless their heart, little Tustin, they have a population about half that we do. But when you look at their budget, they actually pay per capita. Their budget is more per population than Orange is. So they're actually spending more per population than we are in their budget. So their budget is at a proportion higher than us. They also have 2 Costco's.
Oh my gosh.
Two
Yeah.
Costco's. There's the district, and there's the marketplace, and the Tustin side of the marketplace is great. So they have that as well.
Mhm.
I always try to tend to look at Fullerton as something that kind of aligns with us. They're also a central Orange County city. They have their own police department. Their population is about the same as us. Their budget is maybe a couple thousand less than us, but not by much. It's in the 130s as well. And they are also running a deficit this year and using reserves. And it will be interesting to see what Fullerton does as well over the next years. But they are also having fiscal problems as well. And then you look at Santa Ana, they have the highest sales tax. Garden Grove has a sales tax, and Anaheim doesn't, but I think like 40 some percent of the Anaheim, but the 2 point whatever $billion city of Anaheim budget, about 40% of that is TOT. It's all the hotels.
Oh
So
my
it's a different,
gosh.
it's a different revenue source. So then you start to look at other cities. Irvine has a utility tax. We don't have a utility tax. City of Irvine has a utility tax. So you kind of start to look at how other cities do it. And again, Irvine, it's a lot of homeowners associations. It is not a central Orange County city. So it's hard to compare us, but you have to compare us with cities like Santa Ana, Garden Grove, Fullerton, and Anaheim. Those are kind of the cities you have to take a look at Orange and line them up against.
Do you see what I'm talking about here, guys? Do you see what I'm saying when she just knows everything? Like, this is all the information that we need. Yeah, I love this. Okay, let me get to some of these things up here. Okay, someone was saying thank you so much for bringing all this up because a lot of people don't want to talk about any of this. Ryan said I agree that it should be all the dealers and for 0.5% so that it makes sense. I wish the dealers would have been okay with that and stopped all this. Let's see. Comparing apples to orange should be our slogan. Yes, that would be an awesome slogan. Somebody else, no one measures you. Appreciate your vote. Just don't agree with you. And this person saying, but Irvine sucks. So I wouldn't
Aw.
want to live in
My
Irvine. I
my
like Irvine.
my mom
Beautiful,
my
nice
mom
place.
lives my mom lives in Irvine, so
It's nice. It just don't feel like it has our charm. Tustin also has an old town
it
too.
does. A lovely old town.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to ask a couple of the questions that I had here. So do you have any other impacts for not having city staff aside from planning? What other things would we see if we have to make cuts to city staff?
Well, I think what they'll see if they align anything like we did before, you'll see closures. Libraries will be closed probably more days. There'll be less openings. The city hall itself might be closed every Friday, or every other Thursday and Friday. You may see closures for that. You will definitely see less police on the street. I think I know people think this is a scare tactic. It is not. Response time will go down. There's talk about firehouse closures that would affect one section, probably the city, whether it's the north section or the east section. You'd probably have a firehouse closure, so that would slow response times down as well. Finance department, things like billing, water billing, things like that, that all may slow down as well. And the services just aren't going to be provided. The biggest problem in my mind too is the fact that internal service funds won't be funded. So that's one big workman's comp claim away from a bankruptcy. And we can talk about
Oh.
bankruptcy if you like, but it's not having money when a fire station needs to be fixed, or if a fire truck needs to be repaired. I remember a day during the Great Recession time when we struggled with trucks, whether every fire truck was workable. And you think about if a fire truck breaks down, if there isn't a spare truck to put in, then a station doesn't have a truck to respond. And so it's things like vehicle maintenance, things like that, that everything will just slow down or not happen because there isn't the funds to do it. And if you don't have a robust economic development department, which we or response, which we don't have right now, you got to remember this council just put this into place within a year ago. He is starting from zero. It is going to take time to build that up. If Costco decided they found a piece of land and they decided to build tomorrow, they would not open the doors for years
Oh my
because
God.
it would take that long to get them through the process in the city of Orange. It would take forever. So one of the reasons why I'm supporting this, and I have been a taxpayer advocate for the last 10 years of my life. This is what I did for a living when I left the office. We need this time to ramp back up. This is not the same as it was. I disagree. My former colleague Fred Whitaker has come out and has used the Great Recession as we can just do this again. And I'm a big fan of Fred Whitaker's. I loved serving in office with him. I serve at the Community Foundation Board directors together. I count he and his wife actually as personal friends. I'm a great admirer of him, but he's wrong on this issue. This is not the same as it was during the Great Recession. And I think former Councilman Whitaker's view of this is just skewed enough because he came into office. I served with him my last 2 years. So he came into office December of 2010. By the time he helped us kind of cross the finish line, but the recession hit in December of 2007. So the council before he came on, we were the ones who were sucking air because we felt like we, had the wind knocked out of us. And he helped us cross the finish line to get us to a point where we weren't using strategic use of reserves anymore. So his view on this may be slightly skewed because of when he came into office. But I just don't agree with him on this. This is not the same as what happened in 2007.
Whoa. Well, okay, we're getting a lot of other questions.
Mhm. How's the Dodgers going? Can I ask
How's
that?
the Dodgers going right now, guys? Could somebody let us know
Yeah.
what's happening? Okay, there's a question from Dan on Facebook. What about we as residents? Oh my gosh, the Yankees 11-4. Oof.
They'll get them next. They'll get them.
What about we as residents step up and do like a volunteer firefighter to help out our fire department? This could help in some way. Unfortunately, we want to have very trained and skilled firefighters because they're saving lives.
Well, and I have an interesting story about that. I go to church in Santa Ana, just across the border, and we had a gal at one of our services fell a couple weeks ago, and it ended up she broke her hip. She was laying on the ground for quite a while. She finally, after a couple minutes, said, "No, you need to call somebody." And so they called 911, and several of us went down and stood in different areas of different parking lots, depending on when the units would roll in. And they didn't come in to where I was standing. So I walked back up and was chatting with a gentleman outside the door who was also an Orange resident. And he said, "Oh, they're in the room." And I said, "Oh, good. I was worried that the gurney wouldn't, fit in the elevator." And he stopped for a second. He goes, "Oh," he said, "the gurney's not here. The EMTs aren't here." And we looked at each other, and he said, "I thought the EMTs rolled with the trucks." And then I realized we're in Santa Ana. It's the Orange County Fire Authority,
Oh.
and they don't use EMTs. They roll with the ambulances. And she laid on the floor for, I'm going to say, another 5 minutes, 4.5, 5 minutes. And then very competent ambulance people came. They loaded her up and took her to the hospital. But to me, that was just this example. And I have nothing bad to say about the Orange County Fire Authority. But I just thought that was an interesting dynamic that we just in Orange, 2 Orange residents standing there, we have a level of expectation for service because that's what Orange does. We provide that level of service. And that wasn't happening in Santa Ana.
I think especially too, every time I've had to call the police, which let's face it, total Karen over here. So, I even when I called, well, when I called when my nephew was having an allergic reaction, fire department was here immediately and with paramedic right away. And then I also called when the homeless guy was trying to smash my car with the shopping cart with the babies in the car. And it wasn't even 2 minutes. Police were here within 60 seconds. It was so fast. It was crazy. They pulled him over immediately. So,
Well, and I'm never going to say anything bad about the sheriff's department. My brother was an Orange County sheriff, a proud Orange County sheriff. I have sons, friends now that are Orange County sheriffs. But again, Orange County sheriffs don't patrol central Orange County cities. They patrol what few streets are left that are unincorporated county, and they patrol South Orange County. I think they also do Yorba Linda, but again, Yorba Linda and Orange is an apples and orange comparison. And we're going to get whatever services that our city can afford to provide. And so the less money we have, the fewer officers are going to be on the street. And you can talk to any South Orange County cities, and you're going to find different levels of service depending on what their councils decide they're going to be paying for public service, public safety response. So some may have 2 officers, some may have 1, some may have 4, but it is going to depend on what we can afford.
which I also heard that if we have to close a fire station, that our homeowners insurance will go up.
Yeah, and I don't
I
know
don't
about. I
know.
do know there's problems with mutual aid. We have to be able to provide mutual aid, so that we can have mutual aid. Those of us who have lived through multiple wildfires here in the city of Orange on our east side know how important mutual aid is. And so there's going to be a lot of discussion about being able to still provide enough service to Orange so that we can also provide mutual aid so that we
Oh.
get it when we need it.
You know what I think is also important that I really wanted to do because I've had so many of you reach out to me and ask me how I'm voting. And I think that I don't want to be the one to lead anyone in a direction on that. And I'd rather have you guys be informed about the different propositions that are on the ballot. So I've asked our wonderful Carolyn here to break them down
Yeah,
for us.
I'm more than happy to do that. When I was with the Orange County Taxpayers Association, I would go out and talk about measures, just a nonpartisan, just the facts, not how I'm going to vote or how you're going to vote, but just if this is what you believe. So there's 10. I'm happy to run through them as quick as you like. Proposition 2 is a statewide school proposition for a school bond. It's a $10 billion bond. It will be matching funds for school districts. So that's why you're seeing so many local school districts put bond measures on, because they need to have matching money to get this. Think about 8.5 billion go to elementary schools. And the rest, 1.5 will go to community colleges. It's a general bond obligation. For those of you who don't know, general bond obligations are paid from the general fund of the state of California, and we don't have a lot of bond capacity left because we have so many bonds outstanding right now. But I believe it's going to be, I know it's a $500 million a year payment from the state of California general fund for 35 years. And
Wow. So
that's what the school bond, well, that's what they'll pay out of our general taxes from the state of California. Yeah, the last bond that passed was in 2016. So
and how much will that cost us? What's the what's the brass tacks of that?
500 million times
500
35.
million times
I
35
cannot, I
years.
can't calculate that many zeros in my head.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
billions.
Wow.
At least
Okay.
billions. Prop 3 is a constitutional right to marry. That's a legislative constitutional amendment. And a lot of people ask me, well, I thought it was already legal for there to be same-sex marriages, and that is true. However, in 2008, those of us who remember Prop 8 that passed with about 52% of the popular vote that made marriage between a man and a woman only, and that is still on our constitution in our constitution. So this is a proposition to clarify that. There are the opponents to this are I think that the definition is a little too broad, so that's why there was a little bit of opposition to this, but that is about it.
Mm.
All right, Prop 4. It's another general obligation bond. This is going to cost us $400 million a year for 40 years. So a little bit, yes, less a year, but more years to pay it off. It's another $10 billion bond for safe drinking water, wildlife prevention, protecting communities, natural lands. It's basically a park type bond. Cities will be able to apply for this. The California state legislature tends to put in a lot of policies on a yearly basis about clean water and energy and climate change and things like this, and they need money to pay for it. And this bond is what will probably be paying for that as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Everybody wants money everywhere. When I was looking at the ballot, it was like everyone, give me money, give me
Yeah.
money, give me money. And then Measure Z is on the back on the last page. I'm like, oh,
Takes
great.
a while.
Yeah.
So Prop 5 is actually another a check on Prop 13, which is those of us remember Prop 13 from the 70s. Some cities, we don't see this in Orange, but there are some cities who actually put bonds on the ballot and then use that money to pay for things within the city. And that those payments will get put on your property tax bill like school bonds do. Our city has never done that before. But right now, because of Prop 13 that was passed in the 70s, it's a 2/3 vote threshold, which is what, a lot of taxes are. This will lower the threshold to 55% for a city to put on a bond for either a housing issue or a very general public infrastructure as well. So it is a little bit of a check on Prop 13 and changes the voter requirements, lowers the threshold for a city to put a bond, to pass a bond.
Ooh.
All right, Prop 6. You're probably going to like this one. Right now, if you're incarcerated in a state prison, you have to work. You don't have an opportunity to say, I don't want to work. They work in the laundries, they work in cafeterias, they work all that kind of stuff. Prop 6 would actually say that incarcerated people do not have to be forced to work anymore. That if they do decide to work, they get work credits to maybe get out early, or they would be paid to do the jobs that they do. This was floated by the legislature a couple years ago, and they didn't go for it because of the cost to pay incarcerated people. It was a ton of money every year to do that.
I don't think I do like this one for the record.
Kind of knew you weren't.
I think if I have to work for a living to pay for food and a house for my family and everything else, doesn't everybody have to work to eat? I don't know. Anyway, okay.
Prop 32 raises a minimum wage. Right now it is $15 an hour, and this would raise the minimum wage to $18 an hour. Depending on how many employees a business has, it clicks in at different dates, but it raises it from 15 to 18. Prop 33. Okay, so 33 and 34 are kind of my two favorites because you see all the commercials. I mean, it's all 33 and 34. It's either no on 33, yes on 34, or vice versa. So Prop 33 expands the city's ability for rent control. Back in the 1990s, there was California state legislation called Costa-Hawkins Costa-Hawkins Act, Housing Act, and it basically limited what cities could put under rent control. And it limited it to apartments built before a certain date, but a city couldn't force someone who owned a single family home that they would be forced to, they could only rent it for a certain amount of money. Cities weren't allowed to do that. This actually removes that restriction. And so cities, if they want, could literally legislate how much people could charge for not only apartments, but rent on some condominiums and homes as well.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense because I see a lot of people in Orange that I know own a lot of properties with signs in their front yard saying no on Prop 33. I can see why.
and, and like I said, I'm trying to be really careful, be very
Yeah,
nonpartisan about this, but
yeah.
there's a housing crisis now. I have 3 adult kids, none of which could afford to live in Orange County. And if all of a sudden you're saying that if you own a home, you can only rent it for a certain amount, people might say, oh, well, your kids could then afford it. But it also will mean that nobody will be building houses
It's a
anymore in the
big
state of California. But the interesting thing about this one is that it has, I can tell you the supporters for this are Senator Bernie Sanders, the LA County Board of Soups, ACLU, and it has $40 million in its coffers, which is why you see so many people, so many ads, because it has $40 million. $35 million of the support money comes from an organization called the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. And you need to remember that because now we're going to talk about Prop 34. And this is the one that people look at me and they go, I don't even understand this. I read the title and I don't even understand it. This basically restricts spending on prescription drug revenue by certain healthcare providers. So, right now, nonprofits can actually buy prescription drugs at a discount, and then they're allowed to turn around and sell it to their patients at market rate. Because the government
what?
wants them to be able to take that additional revenue and use it to supply care for more patients. So it's called the Federal Discount Prescription Program. It's been around in a while. But the definition for this yes vote is that it requires healthcare to spend 98% of these revenues from the discount on their patient care, but it gives a very strict definition of which healthcare provider, I mean, a very strict definition of which healthcare provider it covers. And can you guess which healthcare provider it covers?
The AIDS.
Healthcare Foundation. So this bill is sponsored by the California Apartment Association, who is against 33. But over the years, the United AIDS Healthcare Foundation has used that revenue and they've used it for political activity, not for patient care, and
What?
mostly for rent control initiatives all over the state of California. So a lot of people call this a revenge proposition, which you see commercials that other people are saying this just forces someone who some people consider an abuser of this discount to actually use the money for healthcare.
No
So
wonder
that's
they have
why
so much
you
money.
see 33, 34 ads. I hope that makes sense.
What?
Does it make sense?
Thank God you're explaining all this.
Okay.
Who would have
Yeah.
known?
So the next one is 35. And managed care organizations, places like CalOptima, Kaiser, are taxed on the number of enrollees they have in the managed care. And that tax goes to the state of California. And this one, just if you vote yes on this, it basically says that you want that tax money to get rolled back into patient care for these managed healthcare organizations. And this is the one that both the Democratic and the Republican Party have come together in support, which is always fascinating when that happens. So basically, it says that this tax that they've been taxed on for since 2009, that the state can't use it for a lot of other uses. If they're paying the tax, then it really needs to go back to provide services for their organizations. And the current legislation in legislatures in Sacramento and the administration have expanded who actually gets Medi-Cal provision. And some of these organizations they're losing a lot of money and care is dropping because they don't have the money for it.
Wow.
So this just requires that in every healthcare organization in the world is in support of it. And the last one is Prop 36, which I know you've talked about before. And this is reversing what was voted on back in 2014 by Prop 47 and actually making misdemeanors back to felonies and putting a drug rehab program together for those who really don't need to be incarcerated. And I think will help policing across the board. So I know you spoke about
I know,
that.
and this one's a really sensitive one for me because I just see, I actually just got an update from police because I like to check in with them when a case closes or when someone is sentenced. And so the 2 men that were killed in the drunk driving accident, it was on Thanksgiving Day just this last year. So it's taken a year to finally get sentencing, but um they were going into their car and loading leftovers into their truck, and a man that was extremely drunk took the corner really fast and hit him and killed them both. And he was just convicted to 13 years in prison. So that's what happens. You kill somebody, and you're only going to kill two people, and you're only going to jail for 13 years. I also am following closely the accident that happened, the motorcycle accident on Chapman. Um, and with that, the gentleman that was, did you know there was two people on the motorcycle, the boyfriend and the girlfriend. The boyfriend is still in a coma, and the girlfriend was killed. So I'll follow that closely as well. But my cousin, I was very close with last December, was killed. He gave his keys to someone because he had been drinking, and so he gave his keys to a friend at the bar to drive him. Well, turned out that guy was twice the legal limit and had 3 DUIs that year, and so he was actually supposed to be sentenced the day before Treats in the Streets while I'm supposed to be passing out candy, and they just pushed it back again. So it's been, a year now for that. So this I am extremely passionate about. We need, without repercussions. It just it's a free for all in our state for people, for criminals to go out and do things, and there's no repercussion for it. So I'm definitely, definitely for that passing. Anyway, that's a long one for
Yeah,
that
and then
part.
we have 3 local ones. We have a, school bond for, Santiago. I think it's about a 720 million. It would be about 1.4 billion by the time it's paid off. By the
1.4
time it's paid
billion.
off, it's because
7.
7
Wow.
it's the build. And then we have the Safe and Sane fireworks, which, I'm not opposed to Safe and Sane fireworks. I just am opposed to the war zone we both live around on 4th of
Yes.
July. And then
Yeah.
Measure Z. And I just wanna say, as someone who has been a taxpayer advocate for a number of years, this is really Measure Z is really about what kind of community you wanna live in. And we can talk about bankruptcy. When Stockton went bankrupt, their actually solution was to pass a sales tax measure to help them get out of the bankruptcy. Bankruptcy really is an option. It's going to toilet our bond ratings. It's going to make it so nobody will want to work at our city. And when we give somebody a badge and a gun, I want to make sure they're the highest quality officials that we can have. We have seen it in communities around us and cities around us where officers are not of that quality. We haven't had issues like that in Orange. When I dial 911 and a fire truck and an ambulance comes, I want to make sure we have the best people. So in my mind, bankruptcy is not going to be an option for Orange. And so Measure Z is really about what kind of community do we want to live in. Do we want to give this council a 10-year ramp up to try to get the city to where it needs to be, so that we have decent revenue coming in, so that we have a diverse revenue, so that we're not reliant so much on sales tax and property tax? What kind of community do we want this city to be? Do we want parks? Do we want libraries? And do I want to give them a 10-year chance to put the city back to where it needs to be? I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to do that. And that was a tough call for me, but I love Orange. And I don't see another option because if it doesn't pass, the cuts will have to happen immediately. There are not enough reserves left to get this city through more than a year.
And do you so another side note question. So and I'm very close with a lot of the city council members. Do you trust them with this money that they will do the right thing and then it will go to saving public safety and that we will have the transparency that we're asking for?
Well, I have yet to meet a council member, whether I like them personally or not, who did not have public safety as a priority. I haven't met anybody. Again, people I may not be the same political party preference with, who personally we just don't get along, that hasn't put public safety first. And again, there isn't any way for this not to go to public safety. It's 70% of the budget. So there isn't any other way. And there'll be a taxpayer oversight committee in place. And there are enough of us now who are engaged in this that who served in office and was happy to leave and go back to our normal lives. There are enough of us now engaged who will be watching the city council and watching what they do with these dollars. I was surprised that not one returning council member was opposed in the election. And
I
I don't know
know.
if it's never happened, to have everybody, and I don't know if that's the community doesn't want to have anything to do with this because of the problem, or because people just think that this council will do the job. And I think there'll be enough of us watching them. And I think the Taxpayer Oversight Committee will be very robust. In making sure that the dollars aren't squandered. Some of the flyers that have come out. The last one that hit my house was had my friend Councilmember Whitaker, former Councilmember Whitaker on it, and then John Capal from Howard Jarvis, who I worked with for many years and who is a dear man, lovely man who knows nothing about the city of Orange. And the quotes on that flyer were so over the top and ridiculous. I just kind of had to laugh and put it aside. Lovely man, wonderful taxpayer advocate at the state level, but knows nothing about the city of Orange. And this is a council who, the council budget for their salaries or their stipends is about 80,000, but I think a majority don't even take the stipend
I
and
think
the
only
insurance.
2 out of
I
the
think
7 take
maybe
it,
three,
or
maybe
3, yeah.
maybe it is two. So there's not a, even if they all stopped, we're only talking about $80,000. That's not. And should they stop it? Candidly, yes. They all should stop it. They all should stop taking it. But that's their personal decisions. But there isn't a lot of money there for savings. And it's not going to be going. They don't get salaries. So it's
We
not
have a
going to be going to
question on
them.
here. It says, how do renters contribute paying back the education bonds tied to property taxes?
It goes to the property tax owner. A lot of owners roll that additional into the rent if they can raise the rent. A lot of it do. I know most commercials has something called a triple net lease, which means that increases in property tax and things like that automatically roll into their rent. For apartment users, probably not so much, but as it goes up, then an owner is probably going to roll that into their rent.
So
Yeah.
it will affect them. And then we
Yeah.
have another thing. What if a homeowner has no children in the public education system? They should be saddled with a 30-year property tax education bond? Yeah, that's up to you to decide, right? I mean, that's a tough one. Um,
I can argue both sides of this.
yeah.
Good school districts raise property values, and so it kind of behooves everybody to have a good school district. And people were paying. My husband and I have no children in this district, and we're paying our property taxes. But people who had no children in the district were paying property taxes when my kids were going through this school. So, but I as an empty nester, I understand that question.
Yeah,
But
like, why would we
yeah.
wanna do this? Oh, and somebody's saying, "By the way, thank you for treats. It was an outstanding success." You're so welcome. I had a wonderful time. Um, let's see. You can't tax your way out of fiscal irresponsibility. So do you think that there has been fiscal irresponsibility in the city, or
No, I think there's been fiscal laziness. I think we've had councils and city managers who just didn't do the job they were supposed to do. I don't think this money was spent unwisely. This isn't a problem with a former council spending something in a way that was bad. This is a former council who didn't bring in revenues enough to meet a growing city and a growing budget. So I don't think there was fiscal irresponsibility. It was laziness and inaction on the council to not bringing in more revenue.
wow, have you ever heard anybody say that before? Not me, but I loved it. Okay, let's see. Also, I was amazed there was no opposition. Math is math. Happy to pay a little extra with oversight. Um, let's see. All that campaign money should go to Orange. I wish that $900,000 the car dealerships are spending were going to Orange. Wish it would have gone to treats in the streets. Kids lead the future. Yeah. So, well, I want to say thank you guys so much. I know this is a ton of information, especially with all
Right.
the propositions,
Yeah.
right? Like my mind is blown about 33 and 34. So I'm going to go back and do a lot of reading about that, of course. And please remember to get out there and vote. It's so important. Um, okay, let's say another question on here. Why are we in debt? What about Chapman University? Can we tax them?
No, we can't. It's not legal. But I truly think that there are colleges all over this country that step up and form partnerships with the university. And and because, I mean, a lot of their property is not on the property tax rolls. If it's used for education purposes, it's not. If it's housing their people and it's not education, then it still is on the property tax rolls. And they do bring a lot into the city as far as visitors and downtown and all of that. But no, legally we can't tax them. But I think that's a tremendous opportunity, and I think um, I think they were a little opposed to it, but I believe they're loosening up. And I think Mayor Slater and council members, I think Councilwoman Barrios, Chapman's in her district, has been in negotiations. And I do think they need to step up. I don't think adding $100 a semester or $50 a semester, $100 a year public safety fee to their incoming students would be a problem at all. I think it'd be more. I have 3 kids. We put them all through college. I didn't blink at things like that. So I don't think any Chapman parent is going to blink at paying an extra $100, $200, $300 a year to make sure that they have police services and fire services to respond. And I think Chapman University, I think they really, the responsible thing would be for them to step up and do that. And there are programs like this all over this country. I know Council Member Gillenhammer and Councilwoman Barrios and Mayor Slater have been researching it, and I think Chapman University should be responsible and step up and do this.
Um, yeah, there was a lot. I mean, at first they weren't very open to it, but I think now that they are open to it. And you know what's really interesting? A lot of Chapman parents follow me that don't even live here, live
Wow.
in Orange, but they want to know what's going on in their community. So the safety of their children, away at college is so important.
I sent 3 kids away to school, and we really wanted to make sure that there was good public safety around them, and if there was a problem, they would respond quickly. When I was mayor, I used to speak at the opening of when school every year. Every year I went, Chapman had me come and speak at multiple things, and I had multiple parents contact me about what the levels of public safety here were in the city.
Which now, just so you know, we have one officer on at a time for every 14,000 people, and the national average is, what is it, one for every 10,000? So we're already
It's about it ranges for a city our size, and again, the statistics are going to be different. Smaller cities need less officers per thousand. I think it's about 1.2 to 2.5 per thousand residents, and we are below what the minimum is for a city of our size.
Ay, ay, ay. Okay, so Deal Hunter on here is saying, I ask tough questions and I do appreciate the info and openness and sharing of ideas. So you're so welcome. We got a couple more things. Yeah, what about partnering with Chapman? And what about the officer's salary to Chapman? Many universities have to pay to have due to response to all the colleges and student calls. Is that so? I know that we do pay for Chapman pays back the city for officers when they need to use them for some of their events and things. They pay for those.
Yes, yes.
But as far as calls to the university,
No,
and
they're
things
a
like
resident. As far as I know, officers respond, and in the numbers I have heard about particular depending on the year and what the students are like that year. Some of the numbers, there've been some mental health problems. Some of the numbers have been staggering for the amount
wow.
of responses that fire has had to respond to on healthcare. But no, they do have their own security. They do have their own security that patrol, but anything off campus is City of Orange Police.
The city of Orange, please. Okay, and so this person's also asking, sorry, is the city losing tax money from all the county buildings in the city?
I don't believe, boy, now I'm gonna have to rattle some wax back here. I don't believe county facilities pay property tax into the county and then our share of it. So
Oh.
so government buildings, and nonprofit owned buildings for that is used for the use of the nonprofit are also not
Hi,
taxed.
Chihuahua. No wonder. We got all these giant
Well, property
nonprofits here.
tax is also fairly, I mean, our property tax now is a good revenue source. Prop 13, I'm big on Prop 13. It's what I did for a living. It's kind of a circuit breaker, and you probably don't want me going into detail on why that is, but it's a circuit breaker for not only stopping your property taxes from going through the roof, but it also keeps it at a level. So property tax is now our largest tax revenue for the city of Orange. And anytime a building changes hands or anytime we rezone something, and a new building comes up, that gets reassessed. MS International on Batavia is putting their new world headquarters there, and I believe the city is going to be seeing a section of that. They're going to be rezoning that from commercial to office, and that's going to be a nice boost to our property tax revenue here in the city if the council passes it.
Oh, yeah, they are MSI?
Mhm.
Aren't they, like, the 3rd largest business, I think, in Orange,
It
or
could be. They are, the world's largest importer of, stone products, natural products. Their granite built the Vietnam Memorial. They're here based in the city of Orange.
hallelujah to
Yeah.
that, we need more
It's a wonderful
MSIs.
family, yeah, wonderful family.
Someone saying, "Thank God for Howard Jarvis." So senior houses for ad money? So senior houses going for ad money, I'm not sure what that means. Um, anyway, if you guys have no more questions on here, I just wanna say thank you, thank you. Do you guys
My
see what I'm
pleasure.
talking about? She is so smart. She has the library of Orange in her mind, and we
Thank
needed to
you.
hear all this. And I don't want it to just, come from me. We need someone that actually knows, that was there during the recession, that can answer all these questions for us. So thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight despite the game. You are so welcome for all the information. If you guys have questions, please feel free to put them in the comments and I will get answers to all of your questions for you. I know it was a lot tonight. But thank you so much. Any
My
closing
pleasure.
remarks from you?
No, just again, your decision on Tuesday is based on what you want the city of Orange to look like. That's really what it's based on. Do you want services to be provided at a level that is going to be adequate for the amount of people we have? Do you want our internal service funds to be funded so that in emergencies we have those dollars? Or do you want the city to start cutting? And that's really it. There isn't any other choice. It's what kind of services do you want? And I'm willing to give this city 10 years, and I'm going to be holding their feet to the fire. I think a lot of people are. And I'm willing to give them 10 years because I love this community and I don't want to see it be degraded. I want it to be a thriving, good community where families want to live, and we have good parks and libraries, and we have good police officers and firefighters responding. That's what I want for Orange. So I'll be voting yes on Measure Z.
So will I, and I also want my property to continue to grow. I don't
Yeah.
wanna see it tank either, right? We are getting so many comments, everybody saying, "Thank you, thanks, Brandy and Carolyn, thanks, yes on Measure Z, I love the city of Orange, so much information, thank you both." Um, love Orange, I'll pay a little extra. We do need a Northgate Market, I would love a Northgate Market here.
Aaron and I talked about putting Northgate where the Best Buy is down
Yes!
on the north end of town. So I don't know how that is going, whether that's going to work or not. But
Oh my
that was what
gosh.
we had originally we talked about. I'm one of the weird people. I go someplace and I instantly am emailing him. Why don't we have this? Why don't we have this? Why
Yes!
don't we have this? But yeah,
No,
Northgate would be
love it.
great.
Northgate would be
Yeah.
amazing. Um, Anywho, well, thank you so much, you guys. Feel free to leave everything in the comments. And oh, Northgate is coming. We'll talk soon. Coming to District 2. Dum dum dum. Councilmember Demetri, do tell. Okay, I'll get to
Good.
the bottom of that. Um, anyway, thank you guys so much for tonight. And yeah, I'll see you, I'm sure, before Tuesday when it's time to vote. So just for now, yes on Measure Z.